Mr. Raul, you were sharing with me the first time we talked about, how you started this nursing journey. Because I don't know if you can say this. Were you one of those that you woke up, one day and said, you know what, I want to be a nurse? Or was it more of a process that you went through of actually saying, you know what, maybe this nursing thing, I have to give it a go? How was your experience and what brought up that idea to become a registered nurse?
Well, obviously Providence has a lot to do with it. It's so funny because now that I'm sitting in this chair, I know everybody's sitting on the other side when you're at the beginning of what you wanted to be your career, right? And I was there. He was there. We've all been there. So I understand. But it's so funny. But looking back now, 32 years, I say, wow. In 32 years, I've lost count of how many hands I've held when they've taken their last breath. In 32 years, I've lost count how many times I've had to do CPR. And luckily, a percentage of those times we've been successful and we've brought patients back. And a percentage of that percentage comes back to tell me some amazing stories, right? Where they were, what they saw, what they experienced while they were absent in the body. And I encourage you guys to stay tuned. We'll cover those stories way at the end. But to answer your question specifically, is that no, absolutely not. In fact, when I was in high school, if you were going to tell me I was going to be a nurse, man, we'd be throwing down. Those are fighting words because girls are nurses, boys aren't nurses, right? That doesn't exist, at least where I grew up. So no, that was the last thing on my mind. I thought I was going to go into computer science, and but God had other plans. And what happened basically is it wasn't working out for me in computer science. Coding was a little harder than I thought. And then one day I wound up really sick. I mean, like really sick. I wound up having a seizure from a high fever. And I was like 20. Rushed to the hospital. Was really out of it. Wound up being intubated, placed in critical care. Because you're young, you bounce back like this, which is what I did. And while I was there, there was a priest, and I remember him so clearly. He came up to me. He's like, "Wow, you're such a nice guy." He's like, I'm a priest. He says, I'm also a psychologist. He says, but believe it or not, I'm also a nurse. I also have my RN. And I like to ask you a favor. He's like, I want you to consider being a father like myself and being a nurse. I think it would be good for you. And I looked at him and I says, look, father, all right, I'll be a father of family. I said, I'll be a father. That nurse stuff, that's for girls. And he's like, look around. There's a couple of guys here. Anyway, I didn't pay too much attention to it. But when I got back to school, once I got better and I was walking through the hallways, I was still trying to figure out where I'm supposed to be in my life. When all of a sudden I passed the nursing office, I saw the door and I thought, it wouldn't hurt to ask a few questions. So I walked in with a few questions. I walked out, signed up, and started a nursing career and nursing school, which I'm going to be honest, I hated every day of it. It was so hard,
Absolutely.
and the only reason I didn't quit was because one day I found myself closer to finishing than I was starting. So I thought, I'm over halfway there. I don't know what else I'm going to do. Let me just continue finishing. And I'll tell you, I found a nice surprise when I graduated and I started working. Is as soon as I started working as a nurse, I loved it. It was like fish to water. How can you dislike school so much, but yet when you start doing your career, you find out that you love it. And part of it had to do with my instructors back then when I grew up. I mean, this is 32 years ago. Our instructors used to eat their own. And I would see it. 26 of us started the class, only 6 of us graduated. They really,
Wow.
really picked on you and really weaned you out. So it was kind of a miserable experience. And I know I have listeners here who are in different parts of their journey, or some are just maybe considering it. Some maybe have been practicing in their country and they really want to pass the NCLEX in the US, or maybe you're about to graduate, wherever you are in your journey. Just remember that you paid a price to get where you are, and only you know how hard it is, how many hours, how many naysayers in your ear saying you can't do it. But if you're still at this point, that means you have a calling. I promise you, the price you have to pay is worth it. I look at it this way. As soon as I graduated as an RN, I realized something. I realized that the least I'll ever be in my life is a registered nurse. That is now the basement of my life. That is pretty good basement because from there, it's up anywhere up. And with nursing, the world opens up. You have so many options, right? As a nurse, yes, I've been a critical care nurse. Yes, I've worked in the ER. Some other things that people don't know is I've been a traveling nurse, right? That's been a wonderful opportunity. I've been a nurse on movie sets and TV sets. As a nurse, I've taken care of paupers, poor people, and princesses from different kinds of the countries, presidents of the United States. I mean, lots of actors and stuff. People, if I name names, and I can't, but if I name names, you would have been like, well, but I promise that it started as a young man in the poorest of neighborhoods where my mother had a second grade degree. My father had a fifth grade degree. I was the first to graduate high school in my family. First one to go to college, first one to graduate college. But there was a ceiling in our family, right? Of you can't do it. It's too hard. It's not for us. That's not what we do type of ceiling. But once I broke the glass, everybody followed. Brothers, sisters, nephews, cousins, they've all graduated, several nurses. My kids, respiratory therapists, they've all graduated in there. So no matter where you are, right? Don't look at your surroundings, about your possibilities. I promise your options open up because and I'm very spiritual about this. I knew that God was walking in front of me. And before I got to certain intersections that were going to be problems, he was already creating answers so that when I arrived, as long as I persevered, when I arrived, the door would be ready for me to go through. So no matter where you are in your journey, you gotta believe that it will happen. You gotta believe, and it's worth it. It's worth it.